You're here, and we're live in Big Red Liquor's offices. And I'm here with Steve Nally. I'm going to adjust real quick so we can see. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So all over the world here. So Steve, thank you first of all for popping in today to see us for a few minutes. You're the master distiller at Bardstown Bourbon Company, which is lots of different things, and we'll get to that here in a second. But you've also been in the business for a long time.
I've been in the business 47 years.
Wow. Okay. And you were probably the longest time you spent was at Maker's Mark, correct? And
I started in 1972. Spent 32 years down there. I actually worked every job, kind of worked my way up through the ranks, and then I stayed there until 2003. Thought I was ready to retire after I left, found out I wasn't. So then I went to Wyoming, built One Whisky, got it up and going. And then that was 2007. And in 2013, I came back home to Bardstown and started with Bardstown Bourbon.
Are you from Bardstown originally?
I am
Or
from
close to Bardstown?
south of Bardstown. I was born and raised right next to Maker's Mark property.
Okay.
So I was around there from zero up. Started working when I was 21 down there. So I've been around a few years.
So you're really familiar with the Maker's Mark recipe.
Yes, yes.
So I guess a question that I would have is, you've worked, Bardstown deals with a lot of different whiskeys, correct? From a lot of different mash bills and then to these fusion and discovery series where you're putting lots of different whiskeys together. But coming from 30 years at Maker's Mark, where essentially you were working with one whiskey. So what is it about working with one whiskey for so long that really has helped you actually in what you're doing with Bardstown now?
I think it kind of centers around doing one particular recipe, one mash bill. You do everything exactly the same day after day. That was a good training exercise, to get everything precise. I had done that, Maker's Mark, One Whisky, both. When we started Bardstown Bourbon Project, it was in the beginning to build our product, to build our brands. And while we were in the building phase, we started talking to different companies, different brands, and we soon saw that the need came up to produce for other brands. And we just kept talking to different customers, different clients, and we're really not one that's going to go out and start up a new product, for somebody. We're not going to do a startup. That's not what we want to do. We want to fill a void that, as you know, the supply is drying up, where other companies had excess product that these people were buying from.
At least from an age standpoint.
From the
So
age.
you kept getting, like you could get 4 years, then you could get 3 years, then you could get 18 months, then you could get new make, and that was kind of a cycle.
That was the cycle, and there is one company up in Indiana that does do new make for people. So we saw that need arise, and then to add to that, the customization. If you went out and bought off the open market, you got what you got, and you had no play, no say in what was made, how it was made, or anything. So we added the customization into it, and we signed on about 8 customers before we ever started. Before I started the still the first time, we had 90% of our 1.5 million proof gallons sold, and that was producing for other people, other customers.
I talked to some people like the New Riff folks and the Rabbit Hole people, and one of the things that kind of comes up in that, and you're one of the only folks that you've built a mash bill from scratch and then seen it all the way through aging and release of a project. What would you say, from all your years of experience, is the most one or two important elements in producing the final flavor of the whiskey? Because to me, always in my mind, I thought, gosh, you could have your mash temperatures at this, you could mash in at this, you could have your mash bill be, these percentages, the water would be a certain way, the distillation time, the shape of the still, the type of yeast, all these different elements, and it's still kind of a crapshoot a little bit, right? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
It is a little bit of a crapshoot in a way, but if you have a clean process and you produce a good clean distillate, you're starting, at mid-range. The aging process will take the rest of it. If you get in inferior ingredients, grains that are not up to standard, then you're going to suffer at the end. So we actually start when the grains come in on the truck. We start testing the grains to make sure it's good quality. Yeast is another very important part of it. The production part of it, from the cooking process, fermentation, distillation, all of that, kind of links together to make that final product that you put in the barrel. So it's kind of make a good quality product, but there's hundreds of parts to that.
There's no one element that you would call out that you would say, this is the most important part. And if you guys don't get this right, it's not going to be right.
That's correct. It's
got to do every little step right along the way.
And to do the number of mash bills that we do, some of those steps can vary from one customer to the other. If I distill the condensers at a different temperature, I can produce different flavor profiles. So even though there might be two recipes similar, they're not exactly the same because I customize each one of them for each customer.
You might have more of a fruity flavor profile or a spicier flavor profile depending on where you make the cuts.
And I can run the condenser at a higher temperature. I'll vent off some of the flavors.
Right.
If I'm getting too much grain in it, I can vent some of that off. So different temperatures will make a huge difference in the product.
Yeah, a lot of focus was probably on the stills at a distillery versus the condensers, where you might have more power to actually adjust the flavor,
Right.
Versus at the still level where it's
we're at the point right now that we monitor about 400 points through the process, from grains coming in to cook temperatures to water temperature that we start to cook with, condenser temperature, still temperature, flow rates. I mean, it's just all the way through the cycle, to keep the process very, very unique from one to the other, and to keep it all in tune.
Okay. So here's another little insider bourbon question, and then we'll get to your whiskeys here. So I've always felt like there was a little bit of a contradiction when we get single barrel programs presented to us, because to me in whiskey it's kind of like, well, we batch them 200 barrels at a time or 500 barrels at a time, and we produce this consistent flavor profile. Then on the other hand, they say, well, there's two barrels sitting next to each other in a warehouse and they taste totally different. So you have these two kind of marketing things where it's like, yeah, we can batch it and make a consistent flavor profile, and at the same time, when it makes sense, barrels are totally different. So I don't know if it's really a question. It's just more of a curiosity that I've always thought was weird in the bourbon industry. But so the question to you would be, how many barrels do you think it takes to batch up that consistent flavor profile if you're drawing from one warehouse or one distillery?
That will really depend on the distiller itself, or the company. We typically will batch about 100, 150 barrels. Some of them will go up to 250, 300 barrels. So it varies from company to company, but the challenge there is to produce consistent taste and flavor time after time after time. At Maker's Mark, we typically did 150 barrels at a time, and we would go in and do samples and blends to get that standard. We always kept a standard, so you keep a standard and you match the batching to that standard each time. And then once you get that, you might have 5,000 barrels within that makeup that you pull 150 barrels out, the same percentage of production date. And then once that formula runs out, you have to go back and redo it again. Companies that have multiple labels, multiple brands, they will have warehouses that will be dedicated to a certain brand. They'll have floors that are dedicated to a certain brand. So they kind of specify which one goes to what. Or if you've got one label, one brand, you have to come up with the same thing every time.
And then over time, there's probably just historical knowledge of what these areas produce in the warehouses from a flavor profile perspective.
And the warehouses can vary as greatly as the barrels can. You might have warehouses side to side that'll age a little bit different. Then if you want to step into the single barrel program, each barrel that you get is going to have a slightly different flavor profile. And the challenge to the distiller is to go in and find them as close as you can to match the one you had before. So that the single barrel can always vary some. And if you get a label, you don't want it to vary any at all if possible. If it does, then it'd be very little. So that's the two challenges with the different programs.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get to your whiskeys because you brought some cool stuff here, and we're actually running a sale right now on the Fusion series here. We're doing those at the moment for $50 a bottle, which is actually a pretty good price for that whiskey. So this must be really fun, and maybe talk a little bit the thinking behind. Okay, we can source some whiskeys. We're right in the heart of bourbon country, so we've got some access to some different things, and at the same time, we're going to combine that with spirit that we're making, and figure out what percentages and flavor profiles work the best. And that's really your approach to making the whiskey. Is that correct?
It is. We, like anybody else, we want to get our product that we made on the market as soon as possible.
Sure.
So in 2 years, we started kind of doing some blending and some mixing of product. And we actually went through plant-wide. We had about 12 people within the plant that from culinary, beverage, management, and distilling teams that went in and sampled. There was a total of 52 blends made up. Some of it had different percentages of our product. It had different percentages of products we had purchased. And we went through, and through the panel, we would taste about 6 or 7 a day. And we would narrow it down to 6. We went back and got those 6 and narrowed it down to this one. But to add to make sure we were kind of on the right track, we would go in and pull some black brands off the shelf that were blends, throw them into the mix too. This was all blind. It was set up by John Hargrove, our vice president of production.
You didn't even know.
Nobody knew. Nobody that was on the panel knew.
So you're just judging it based on whether you think it's good, whether you like it, what kind of flavor profile you're going for. So one of the cool things about this Fusion series is that on the side of the bottle, it's pretty much like a full disclosure of what percent of the blend is there, how old that is, where it's from, and what its mash bill is, which I think is really neat. Was that some of your input?
That follows along with our philosophy of transparency.
Yeah.
Through the whole system, we are not hiding anything. Everything that we do is transparent. So we wanted to present that, and a common question you get from the public, the customers, is what's this made of? How's it made? So we displayed the mash bill of everything that's in it, the percentages, the age of it, and of course this one says Kentucky bourbon. We cannot show the customer we bought it from, but it is Kentucky bourbon. So everything that we could is displayed on the side label. And that will follow true with all of our products that we put out, that we're going to make it transparent to the customer, the consumer, what it is, what's in it, and how we arrived at it.
One of these is a pretty high wheated mash bill, and one of them is a pretty high rye mash bill. So talk about that, the difference between working with a high rye and a high wheat mash bill.
Well, we wanted to come in and get a sense that the older product that we put in it, we wanted that to have the oaky vanillas, caramels, the good mature aged product. So we wanted that to be in the taste of it. And the wheat is a grain that's used in it, makes a little bit of a sweeter, milder product. So, and then the rye that's put in there gives you more spice, peppery, full-bodied flavor profile. So when you consume this, you'll get initially off the first taste is the caramels, vanillas, and the smoothness of the aged product. And then about halfway back, you start to pick up that sweetness that comes with the wheat product. And then the final finish, when you swallow on the back of the tongue, you'll get that spicy, peppery, and then you'll get just for an instant a little bit of a kind of a burst of flavors. And then, but it's not one that lingers; it soon goes away. And that's one thing that was exciting to us when we picked this was um, it was not a long, lingering, harsh finish on it.
Is final proof of the product, and this is 98.9. So to me, that's saying you're basing proof on a flavor profile decision, not necessarily an economic decision, correct?
We got it down. We tried several different proofs with this to get it to where it doesn't have that real high burn that the higher alcohol proofs have. We got it down to that. If you go any lower than that, you're kind of losing some of the flavors on it. So that was one that we thought showed the best flavor profile in the product itself. And one other thing that we're doing with all of our products, the molecular structure of bourbon is what's on the back of the bottle. So that's what that is made up on, and all of our products will have that on it in relation to a customer that we deal with, that we do a finish with, or ones that we have of our own.
It is really nice and sweet up front. It's actually the first time I've tasted this. I probably should have done it, privately before we did it live, but it's really delicious. And it's pretty well integrated. Do you re-gauge into barrel, or do you just mix barrels straight into like another vessel and then?
We mix barrels into another vessel.
Okay.
We have a big stainless steel vessel that we mix in. And once it's taken out of the barrel, we don't want any change to happen. So if we mix it and put it back in another barrel, then we would get a totally different flavor profile out of it. So we want to stop everything at that point.
So you're being very creative in how you're combining these distillates. I guess what are your thoughts on barrel finishing and some of the other things that are going on with other companies? Are you trying to stick to just blending straight bourbons together, or do you want to you're trying to combine bourbons, rye, corn whiskeys, finish them in sherry barrels, finish them in port butts? I mean, what's your take on all that?
We are trying different approaches to this. We have a product that's out now, the Pfeiffer Pavitt product, and that was we met up with a really great winemaker out in Northern California, Susan Pfeiffer Pavitt, and we went to great length. We didn't just say dump your barrels and send them to us. We'll get them and fill them. When she emptied her barrels, we didn't want her to wash them out or do anything. She emptied them, left a little bit of the leaves and juice in it. She gassed them up to preserve, actually put them on a refrigerated trailer, and we expressed them across the United States. As soon as they got here, we filled them with bourbon to preserve that wine so that we're not spoiled. And then we put it in the warehouse for 19 months. We've got several other finishes in process now that'll be coming out later this year. And we're trying, different things, but we're not rushing it. Leave it in the barrel for 19 months. That's longer than most people leave it. But we kept checking it, and when it got to a certain point that we felt it was as good as it's going to get, that's when we made the decision to bring it out. And it wasn't just a couple of people that did that; it was the whole team, that works on it and does this.
So, let me ask kind of more of a personal question, because I see a lot of distillers get turned into brand ambassadors, and so like to come up here, you had to drive up a couple hours. You're doing this. You're going to do another event tonight. You got to drive back tomorrow. Your time out of the distillery ends up being pretty intense, and I've seen this over time where they take the master distiller and think the master distiller is really more important from a marketing standpoint to build the brand versus, the guys who are actually doing the distilling at the facility. So I wonder what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, just being here, you're going to raise your profile and it's going to continue to go up. And we talked a little bit about social media before we started. Where it's like, I guess like I see, Jimmy and Eddie, they're just kind of always there at the visitor center, or they're doing dinner somewhere else, or they're going to big events. But as far as like helping to produce the whiskey itself, how involved they are, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of back to the fact that you have a good team at the distillery. Once that's mature and developed, then it's okay to leave for a while. We're still involved in what happens at the distillery, but they can run without me. They can make day to day without it. And then if we get to doing product development or something like that, then I would be involved. So it's not like I'm deserting the distillery.
Right.
It's just that now when we first started, that probably couldn't happen. It probably was imperative that I be there. But now the team's developed, the team's comfortable with what's going on. Even though we're making about 38 different recipes right now, everybody has a part they play, and they can all do very well on their own. So it's a good time.
What do you think about Maker's 46? Did that happen after you?
That happened after me.
Were you like a Maker's purist?
I was, and at that time, Kevin Smith was general manager.
Right.
And I went down and I talked to him. I said, "What are you doing?" But the idea behind 46 was to create a little bit different flavor that the people that didn't really care for Maker's Mark, they wanted a little different flavor profile, and it has it. It's a little bit more oaky. It has a little bit more of a woody taste to it than the regular Makers, and it's good, but it's different. And that's what the whole thought process was behind it.
Yeah. Well, I need to come down and visit you guys. I've only heard amazing things about the facility and how beautiful it is, and what an awesome addition it is to the Kentucky bourbon landscape that's down there. I know that tourism. I just remember 9 years ago, you went to Buffalo Trace on a Friday, you'd see maybe 5 or 6 people milling around. But if you go now, there's hundreds of people, and I think it's becoming that way all over the state. So kudos to you guys for building such a nice place.
One thing we felt that was missing in the whole experience was an experience.
Yeah.
It was, and some of this was driven by law changes that have happened in the last year and a half. Visitors are coming in now. They're inquisitive about what's going on at the distillery. That's where this comes into play. It's making things transparent. So when visitors come in, we want them to see everything. We want them to be able to experience everything. And in the past, they could come into our place, Wild Turkey, Maker's Mark, whoever. They could get a tour. They get just a little small sampling of the white dog or the clear product, and that's all they got. Well, laws have changed now to where we can serve a little more product. We can serve aged product. We can serve anybody's product at the bar, and we can also sample, our product through the clear product all the way through aged product. Right. Anybody that we produce for, we can sell their product by the package at the distillery. So, the laws have changed, which has allowed us to develop an experience for the visitor. Last year there was like 1.2, 1.3 million people came through Kentucky for the bourbon experience. And if and when the distillery is developed, and they're all in active process of growing and developing this experience. We're going to try to have something similar to the Napa Valley experience, where they can come in, spend a few days, see more than one distillery, and actually have an experience for their visit.
Fred Minnick said something about that, about it's more of a bourbon lifestyle that they're trying to promote. in the state of Kentucky versus just consuming a product. It's apparel, it's music, it's horse racing, it's all kinds of different things that are focused with bourbon, which is pretty neat.
Well, and, we're known the world over for producing, quality bourbon.
Right.
Bourbon capital of the world, right in Bardstown.
Bardstown's the heart of it.
They're coming in and they want to see what makes it the bourbon capital of the world. And we have several distilleries. It's primarily 9 major ones, but it's quickly growing to more than that now. We came in. There's possibility or likelihood of another one coming to Bardstown, sizable. Diageo's building one over in Marion County. So, it's a growing business right now, and it's really, really taking off. So we want to capitalize on that. We want to make it interesting for the consumer and the purist to come in and see.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. It's probably the most important question of the day. UK or U of L?
Blue.
Yeah.
Did you?
You're a country boy, aren't you?
Did you expect that?
No.
Yeah, blue all the way.
It's too bad IU doesn't play Kentucky anymore, because that was always.
It was.
Anyway. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time, and really a pleasure to meet you and talk about on Bardstown. And if we can send customers down there to visit, we will. And as much of these whiskeys as we can sell, we will do that. So
please do. And anybody's welcome. We're opening the visitor experience probably the end of June, end of July, middle of August, where we will have public tours. We're just trying to develop this to where it's not just a normal tour; it's an experience. So, like I said, just keep on social media, and you'll find out when we're open and what's going on. But we'd love to have everybody down. You're welcome.
All right. Enough.
Good job.
That's super cool. I'm glad I got to see this. That's neat. Yeah. That was good. I mean, like 5 cases while we're talking.
Oh, great. That's not bad.
It'll just keep rolling all day.
Okay.
Yeah, people just I don't know how much you write.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook.
Yeah, I'll do that because I can send those out to Tracy.
Yeah.